You've seen both words, maybe on a chocolate bar wrapper, maybe on a smoothie powder at the health food store. Cacao, cocoa. They look almost identical, they sound almost identical, and most people just assume they mean the same thing, but they don't. And the story behind why they're different stretches back over 3,000 years, crosses oceans, survives empires, and ends right there in your grocery store aisle with two nearly identical-looking packets that are actually worlds apart. By the end of this video, you will never look at a chocolate label the same way again. Let's go. Around 1500 BCE, deep in the tropical lowlands of what we now call Mexico and Central America, an ancient civilization called the Olmec discovered a tree, a strange, beautiful tree that grew tall in the humid shade of the rainforest. And on this tree, growing directly out of the trunk, not the branches, but the actual trunk, were these large football-shaped pods. Inside each pod were seeds, about 30 to 50 of them, wrapped in a sweet white pulp. The Olmec figured out that if you fermented those seeds, then dried them, then ground them up, you could make something extraordinary. We call that tree Theobroma cacao, and the name tells you everything you need to know about how people felt about it. Theobroma is Greek for food of the gods. The Olmec passed this knowledge to the Maya, and the Maya took it to a completely different level. To the Maya, cacao was not just food, it was sacred. It appeared in their creation myths. Cacao pods were carved into the walls of their temples. Kings were buried with jars of cacao. It was used in wedding ceremonies, in religious rituals, in offerings to their gods. But here is what surprises most people. They did not eat chocolate, not in any way we would recognize today. They drank it. They would take the fermented, dried seeds, grind them into a paste, mix that paste with water, add chili peppers, spices, sometimes corn, and pour it back and forth between two vessels from a great height to create a thick, frothy, deeply bitter drink. No sugar, no sweetness, nothing remotely like a chocolate bar. This drink had a name in the Aztec language called Nahuatl. They called it chocolatl. Some historians believe this is the origin of our word chocolate. And at this point in history, everything, the tree, the seed, the drink, all of it was simply called cacao. One word, one plant, thousands of years of tradition. Now jump forward to 1519. Spanish conquistadors arrive in Mexico. They encounter the Aztec Empire under Emperor Moctezuma II, and they see this drink everywhere. Moctezuma reportedly drank it in enormous quantities. It was served at royal banquets. Cacao beans were literally used as currency. The Spanish wrote about it. Some of them hated it. One famous account described it as more a drink for pigs than for men. But they kept watching, and they noticed that this bitter drink held enormous power, social, spiritual, and economic. So they brought it back to Spain, and the Spanish did what they did with everything. They adapted it. They added sugar, then vanilla. They served it hot, and suddenly this ancient, bitter, ceremonial drink became something the European nobility went absolutely wild for. Chocolate houses spread across Spain, then France, then England. By the 1600s, drinking chocolate was one of the most fashionable things you could do in Europe. It was expensive, exotic, and completely addictive. And at this point, the drink still had the same name. In Spanish, it was cacao. In French, cacao. In Dutch, cacao. The word had traveled across the Atlantic almost unchanged. Almost. Here is one of the most interesting accidents in the history of food words. When the cacao trade started moving through English hands in the 17th century, something got scrambled. Nobody knows exactly how or why. It might have been a clerical error in a trade ledger. It might have been confusion with another tropical plant, also called cocoa at the time, the coconut palm. It might have just been the way English merchants heard and wrote down the word phonetically. But somehow, cacao started being spelled cocoa in English documents. And then it spread. It got printed on tins. It appeared in trade catalogs. It was stamped into the English language, and nobody went back to correct it. By the 1700s, cocoa was the standard English word. Cacao was still used in science and botany. The tree is still officially called Theobroma cacao. But in everyday English conversation and commerce, cocoa had completely taken over. Here's the important thing, though. At this stage, cacao and cocoa still meant the same thing. The spelling had changed, but the product had not. The real split in meaning had not happened yet. That required one more thing: a machine. The year is 1828. The place is the Netherlands, and a Dutch chemist named Coenraad van Houten has just done something that will permanently change the chocolate world forever. He invented a hydraulic press that could squeeze cacao paste, the thick, oily substance made from ground cacao seeds, and separate it into two distinct things. First, cacao butter, the fat, rich, smooth, and incredibly useful. Second, a dry, dense, solid cake left behind after the fat was removed. That cake could be ground down into a fine powder. Van Houten then took it one step further. To make that powder dissolve more easily in liquid and to reduce its natural bitterness, he treated it with alkaline salts. This process became known as Dutch processing, or Dutching. The result was a powder that was smoother, milder, darker in color, and much easier to use for mass production. This was a revolution. Within decades, major companies across Europe and America seized on this technology. Cadbury in England, Nestle in Switzerland, eventually Hershey in America. They roasted the beans at high heat, they Dutched the powder, they mixed in sugar and milk, they created the shelf-stable, affordable, mass-market chocolate products that most of us grew up with. And the word that followed this, industrial, heavily processed product? Cocoa. The word that stayed attached to the raw, traditional, minimally processed product? Cacao. That is the moment the two words actually split in meaning. Not in ancient Mexico, not in the Spanish colonial era, in a Dutch factory in 1828 when a hydraulic press separated fat from solids and created an entirely new kind of product.
So here we are today, and the honest truth is, the food industry has never fully standardized these terms. There are no strict legal definitions in most countries, but there is a general distinction that most specialty producers and nutritionists follow, and it is worth understanding. When you see the word cacao on a modern product, it usually means the ingredient has been minimally processed. Cacao nibs are just fermented, dried, and broken up cacao seeds. Raw cacao powder is made at low temperatures without alkalization. These products retain more of the natural compounds found in the original seed, particularly flavonols, which are a type of antioxidant. When you see the word cocoa, it usually means more processing has happened. The beans have been roasted at higher heat. The powder has likely been Dutched, meaning alkalized, to neutralize bitterness and improve solubility. This gives you the familiar, smooth chocolate flavor you know from hot cocoa mixes and baking recipes. But some of those natural compounds are reduced in the process. Here's a simple way to think about it. Cacao is the ancient, raw, wild version, the one that Maya priests prepared for ceremonies thousands of years ago, the one that still carries the original name. Cocoa is the modern, processed, tamed version, the one that came out of the Industrial Revolution, the one that fills supermarket shelves around the world. Neither one is automatically better. They're different tools for different jobs. Raw cacao powder in a smoothie might give you more antioxidants. Dutch processed cocoa in a chocolate cake might give you a richer, deeper flavor. Context matters. What you are making matters. But now you know which is which, and you know why. Let's land this plane. 3,000 years ago, in a rainforest in Mesoamerica, people discovered a tree. They called its seeds cacao. They turned those seeds into something sacred, a bitter, frothy, ceremonial drink that they believed connected them to their gods. Then the Spanish arrived, and cacao crossed an ocean. Then the English misspelled it and called it cocoa. Then an industrial revolution mechanized it, alkalized it, sweetened it, and turned it into one of the most consumed products on planet Earth. 2 words, one long journey. A story that moves from ancient jungle temples to factory floors to your kitchen cabinet. The next time you pick up a packet of raw cacao powder or a tin of hot cocoa mix, you are holding a piece of that entire journey in your hands. That tiny difference in spelling is not a typo. It is 3,000 years of human history compressed into 5 letters. Pretty wild, right? If you enjoyed this, hit the like button and subscribe. There are more stories like this one coming. And drop in the comments, are you a cacao person or a cocoa person? I genuinely want to know. See you in the next one.